Grumble, grumble.
Hey everyone, it's the Grumpy Meeple, and I am coming at you with something non-Shadows of Brimstone related for a change. And that is my first impressions of Marvel Zombies, X-Men Resistance. So, I have kind of a troubled history with Marvel Zombies. I pretty much relentlessly shit on the campaign both while it was live and while they were collecting the shipping costs for it. I stand behind basically all of my concerns that I voiced back then. I think that the heroes to an extent feel a lot like heroes from the other Zombicide games. The very similar abilities to kind of recycled abilities from Black Plague and so forth. And I think, the shipping cost was ridiculous, astronomical, beyond any reason. And I'm glad that I didn't pay them because I backed this through a local retailer. But that's all water under the bridge, because now that I actually have the game, I did go all in on Marvel Zombies, so I have everything, including the plastic tokens and Galactus, which I haven't even unboxed yet. And so I've played Marvel Zombies, which is the zombie mode where you're playing as the zombies going around trying to complete objectives and devour your enemies to control your hunger. But I've been focusing mostly on the hero mode that comes in X-Men Resistance. And that's for one very simple reason, as I've said many times on this channel before. I like Marvel. I love the X-Men. And that's just my jam. So, I've been diving into the hero mode. I'm on the third mission, but I'm on the second mission, but I played 3 times because I failed once. And so having gotten a couple plays in, I thought I would just kind of give you my impressions on what we got here. So first off, the tiles are fucking rad. You can see here that you've basically got the courtyard, garage, and the kind of first level of the X-Mansion laid out for you. And I really like this because these tiles are just so much more thematic than your typical Zombicide tiles. The same fucking boring, like even in Marvel Zombies, it's a tile of New York City, and so the art, they try to jazz it up. They do have like Avengers themed locations, and it's all right. But what is interesting about this set is that it's taking place in a particular environment consistently throughout the missions. So it's always the X-Mansion. So they lay it out differently, but ultimately you're playing in the same environment. So I'll give you an example. The last mission that I played was basically, if this is north, I'm trying to think of how to lay this out. The last mission was laid out like this. I'm just gonna fucking do it live. With just these 4 tiles. And so you were starting here at the entrance and making your way through. Now, in this mission, they've respected the fact that, the X-Mansion is the X-Mansion. So while you might come at it from a different kind of viewpoint, it's still a static location. And I don't know, something about that I just really like. And it helps that it's such a cool environment. It does not help that these fucking CMON tiles are so goddamn warpy. This is my only complaint with the production quality, and it's a persistent complaint with every CMON product I've ever owned, that the tiles warp. I'm usually able to fix it by just throwing a shit ton of desiccants into the box, and they just soak up moisture and they flatten back out over time. But you know, I opened this up just this week, and so they're still a little warpy. So I love the tiles. I love the art on the tiles. There's some new rules as well for what they call large rooms like this, which are interesting. There are windows in the X Mansion that you and or zombies can actually break through to bypass doors and such. That's really interesting. And then the first mission I played, the mansion was basically shut down, and so there were security screens on the windows that made them impossible to open. But you know, in this mission, it may be possible to open them, and so you may be in a scenario where if you're standing here and there's a zombie here and he can see you through the window, he'll break through the window instead of coming through the whole mansion to get to you, and that's really interesting. In terms of, you know, the other components, it's all the standard CMON high quality stuff. The dashboards are amazing. Originally, I was a little bummed because this dashboard looks exactly like the zombie mode dashboard, with the exception of the color. And so I was thinking to myself, well, that's not very cool. That's not very unique, you know, to have the heroes play basically the exact same way as the zombies. But they switch up their mechanics, because basically this track right here in zombie mode represents your hunger, and hunger is something that has to be actively managed, basically, because as you're taking actions, and I can't recall exactly what triggers it, but your hunger level is increasing, and once it gets maxed out, you become ravenous, and you can't do anything until you devour an enemy. So you have to take a special action to devour a single enemy, instead of, you know, using your abilities and whatnot. So it's a really cool kind of like push your luck mechanic, where I believe you're like increasing your hunger to roll additional dice or to power abilities, and then you have to devour to bring it back down. Whereas power in the hero mode is reflected on this chart, and it just acts much differently. There's no negative. The other thing about hunger is if you're maxed out at the start or end of your turn, you actually take damage because you're like starving. Power doesn't work that same way. There's no negative to having it maxed out. You can take an action on your turn that lets you increase your power by 2, and then you could spend it in that same turn. So it's doing something that I think is really cool for Zombicide, which is giving you shit to do when, like, everybody's played Zombicide and been in that scenario where it's like you're trying to stack up at the door, but you're just far enough away that you can't, and it's like you got to spend a whole turn just moving, or a whole turn just fucking sitting there, you know. And they've solved that problem with this iteration by giving you both the ability to increase your power as an action, and also to draw a heroic trait as an action. So these are like little modifiers, which again, I was originally bummed because I'm like, well, that's, again, it's not very thematic. Why is Colossus all of a sudden, you know, agile, as is shown in this card? But ultimately, it does add to the game. It gives you something to do in those kind of down action scenarios where, you know, like, maybe just because of how things worked out, Colossus is activating last and he's coming here. You know, it's his last turn, last activation, and is he really going to kick this door down and spawn all this shit that is just going to flood out and destroy him? Well, maybe not. So instead, he can decide to increase his power, which is, again, I think a cool addition to the game. Production-wise, you know, like, the miniatures are fucking ridiculous. Like, this game is the counter argument to, like, I always see this in the Shadows of Brimstone community. People will ask, quite reasonably, hey, why aren't the miniatures single piece? Why do I have to assemble them? And there'll always be some asshole who will claim that, well, you don't get the quality or the level of detail in a single mold miniature that you do in whatever, I can't remember the term, is it ABS, plastic, on the sprue miniature. And this game is the rejoinder to that, basically, because these miniatures are fucking rad. They're just as cool as anything in any fucking Flying Frog game or whatnot. And then look at how dynamic the pose is. Look at the environmental effect that is on the miniature. Like, they're just fucking rad. You've got Storm here, and she's literally sitting in a tempest, like rising up out of it. Like, fucking unbelievable. Magneto is surrounded by implements that he can manipulate with his magnetism. And the zombie miniatures are, they're just some of the coolest miniatures I've ever seen. This, to me, is the coolest miniature that I've ever seen, basically. It's Iceman, and I'm going to get up so that you can really get a look at this. It's Iceman on an ice slide, trailed by a gigantic ice skull that he's brought into existence for no other reason than to fuck with people and terrify them. This, to me, is like one of the coolest miniatures I've ever seen. You've got everybody's favorite zombified Juggernaut, and he is just like ripping through a wall, basically. And I mean, just look at how fucking awesome these minis are. Jean Grey just surrounded. This is, the Phoenix Death Force, basically surrounded by a flaming kind of pile of skulls. I mean, and I'm even going to go back and show you the heroes again, because I want to make sure you get a good look at them. These minis are fantastic. I love them. And anybody who says that you only get decent miniatures off of sprues is fucking kidding themselves. Even if you could argue that from a pure, like, level of detail kind of perspective, you're never going to get these dynamic poses, and you're not going to get the kind of durability where I could throw this literally across the room and have no fear of it breaking, which is a real concern with stuff from, from other companies like Games Workshop or Flying Frog, who have those kind of on the sprue miniatures. Here's Rogue. Again, you can see the environmental effect. She's coming out of the forest because she's kind of a very earthy character. And here you've got Wolverine, which is like the most kind of boring of all the sculpts, and it's still really cool. He's still in a dynamic kind of berserker rage pose, and he's poised on these rocks. Even just like the basic enemies, these are the brutes in this game, and so you can see that they're actually Reavers from the Marvel universe, the cybernetic kind of enemies of Wolverine, who were causing all sorts of trouble when the X-Men were in Australia. And then even the walkers, which are always the most boring, shittiest miniatures. They had the absolute genius idea to make them themed off of Madrox the Multiple Man. So the idea here is that Madrox has been turned into a zombie, and all the walkers are dupes of him. Incredible. super thematic, and like I said, you're getting, you know, your standard CMON high quality card stock. The, you know, if you get the plastic token pack, I mean, it's amazing, and I love having the option to bling my games out. This is something that I look for in all my games, and you just never get enough options to bling these games out, and CMON usually gives them to you. So hats off to CMON for a hell of a production here. I've only opened the core box for Marvel Zombies and X-Men Resistance. I can't wait to get into the stretch goal box, because man, there are some crazy ass heroes in there and sculpts and stuff. So really looking forward to it. The other thing that I love about this game is it plays and sets up incredibly quickly. You can see that they've learned some things from previous iterations, like second edition, where there are virtually no tokens in this game. There are door tokens, window tokens. These are like objective tokens, and then you've got your spawn and your exit tokens, and that's basically it. So what they've done instead is they've printed the spawn locations inside buildings and the bystander spawn locations, which is a cool mechanic where there are actually like NPCs that you have to rescue, and when you do, you get a special ability from them, and those also are really cool sculpts. They've printed that stuff onto the boards, so it's just radically cutting down the setup time. Even the doors are just printed on the board. It's obvious there's doors, there's windows, and so you don't have to put out, you know, a door token to get going. So, you know, I'm going to show you right now, actually. Let's just set this mission up, because I want to play this game anyways. So this is MH2 Hit the Road. The garage looks to be mostly untouched since the outbreak, and there are still some vehicles left in there for us to escape in. We can't make it to the underground in time, and the mansion seems to have been overrun. It looks like the road is our best bet. But of course, Scott keeps his precious wheels locked up tight. Let's find a way inside and get out of here. So Scott Summers, who is the owner, I presume, of the sports car, has been zombified, and I didn't get to show him off. Let me find him real quick, because it's another absolutely bonkers sculpt. Yeah. So here's poor old Scott Summers holding his own head, standing over the remains of Cerebro, and he's still got his optic blast, and he's just tearing it up. And then while I'm here, I'll show you Sabretooth too. And there's your Sabretooth zombie, which, to be honest, looks a lot like Sabretooth. So he hasn't really changed all that much from the zombification process. Maybe not a huge surprise given his feral nature. So we've got our tiles set up. It shows you right here everything that you need. So you need some bystander cards, and again, those just sit in the spots identified on the board. The Sentinel hand is out there. This is a really cool mechanic too. It's a small thing, but the Sentinel hand is a standalone weapon that just sits on the map somewhere. You can't move it. It was in this same location in the last mission, so I'm assuming that, again, it's kind of a part of the persistent environment, which I, again, really like. And it comes with its own card. It's a item that you can use if you're standing in the location, basically. So it's got a range of 0 to 2, rolls 3 dice, hits on 3+, and each hit counts as 2 hits against a single enemy. And once you use it, you flip it, and then it becomes just this giant hand that you can throw at a range of 0 to 2, and it rolls a die for each enemy in the targeted zone, and heroes can't be hurt by it. So you could roll 20 die with this thing if you lined it up right, but it only hits on 5+. So this is really cool. I had a scenario the other day where I had Mystique who I have not yet shown off, there you go, was in this spot, and this absolute beast Iceman had just spawned right here. He's got a really brutal ability. Let's see if I can find it real quick here. Yeah, so he's got 3 toughness, which means you have to do 3 damage in 1 hit to kill him. And he's got this ability: superheroes attacks suffer -1 to dice results while within range 1 of Iceman. So he's really dangerous, especially in concert with other zombie heroes, because he can really hurt your ability to kill him. And so what I did was I moved Mystique in here. I pulled the Sentinel hand up, and I fucking used some of my power, because the power is used both to trigger effects, and you can just spend it to add a die to your attack. So I added a couple die to the Sentinel hand, and I just nuked him in 1 shot, and that was the end of that. So super exciting, super thematic. Love that they introduced the Sentinel hand into the game. And there's just lots of little touches like that throughout the whole game. You've got your spawn deck, where, you know, it's got your standard stuff where all brutes get an extra activation, or, you know, you're spawning walkers and you got your kind of rush cards and whatnot. But there are also actually occasionally beneficial things in the enemy spawn deck here, if I can find one of them. Yeah, so a bystander can actually spawn. A hidden bystander, which means that they can't be attacked by enemies, at least in their first kind of turn on the board. Basically, every round they roll a die, and if they roll a 5 or higher, the zombies spot them and they'll go after them. But other than that, they'll stay covert on the board. And so the spawn deck can provide beneficial deck abilities. The bystander deck, in the same vein, can actually trigger spawns. So it's just adding a bit of unpredictability to these decks that really spices things up a little bit. You can't rely on a bystander card being a good thing. But anyways, let's just go ahead and set this up real quick. So, as I said, I laid out the tiles and I put the Sentinel hand out, but that's the only setup I've done. The player boards I kept out, but even if you hadn't done so, it's trivial to get those set up. So you just lay out a bystander card in every spot where you see a bystander on the board. Go. We got to lay out some objectives. Okay, place the blue objective randomly among the red objectives face down. So I've got that, and there are 5 objective tokens. Yeah. Okay, there's a green objective out too. So you need your green objective token, which is right there. Then you shuffle up these tokens, which includes the blue token. And you just randomly throw these out on the map as shown in the instructions. Get your spawn points. And your exit zone. So the exit is here on the car. Again, thematic, cool, I love it. And you get number 1 spawn point. Is there. Got a red spawn point here. Got your green spawn point here. Red here. Oh, five. So another thing that they do in this version that I really love is they scale it down. So you can play this with just 4 heroes instead of 6, which makes everything easier. Setup and getting it all on the board. You can see it takes up a relatively small amount of space considering. So what they do is they add a rule. Basically, you add spawn points if you're playing with 5 or 6 heroes. So love that also. And so we're actually done with that. And then you just got a couple of locked doors, which are different, which function differently than normal doors. So you need the green locked door here, and where is the blue locked door? It is right there. And then that's it for setup. And you know, you find the start zone, which is right here, right outside the mansion, and you're ready to play. And gameplay just is so quick. Like you can legitimately get through a game of X-Men Resistance in 45 minutes at the most, I would say. So at the start of the hero turn, everybody just increases their power to 1. So every turn you're regenerating power. And then you just start, you refresh your activation tokens. It's the first turn, so they are already refreshed. And then you just start activating. So, you know, I'm just going to start with Colossus. And what I am trying to do here, just need to refresh myself on that. I got to take the blue and green objectives. So I need this, and I need to find the blue objective. I don't know where that is, but I know that it's hidden in the mansion somewhere, right? It's amongst those. And then escape via the exit with the superheroes. So get to this door. The greenhouse keys place a blue objective randomly among the red objective face down. Each red objective gives 5 XP. The blue and green objectives each give 5 XP to all superheroes. Blue door can only be opened once the blue objective has been taken. Green door can only be opened once the green objective has been taken. So I got to go into the mansion, find the blue objective to be able to open this door, grab this, which will open that door, and then get the fuck out of here. So everybody gains a power, and then you just start doing your kind of standard Zombicide activations. So I'm going to start with Colossus, and the first thing he's going to do is open the door. You don't have to roll for that anymore. That's not a thing in Zombicide anymore, which is nice. I mean, you know, it was cool in Black Plague. Black Plague is the last time that I remember that being a thing. And it does add tension. Like, man, it can add some serious tension because you have to roll to try and get a door open unless you have a particular weapon, and if you fail, you know, you're shit out of luck, basically. Shuffle this up a little bit. All right, so we're spawning here and here and here, which is a spawn. Like I said, that deck can be bad, and so there you go. So just luck of the draw, these 2 cards actually don't do anything because they just give extra activations to these models, and I don't have any of those models out. So those just go away. Here I just spawn 1 runner, and the models are colored differently so that they're easy to identify. I still wish that they would stop doing this kind of light brown and dark brown, because I imagine somebody who's colorblind is going to have a real problem with that. But it's obvious these brutes are huge, so maybe it's kind of not an issue. He spawns there. Colossus has 2 actions left. He is going to step in, and he's not going to be able to get to that runner, so he's just going to power up. He's going to take 2 power, and that's his activation. Magneto will activate next. He's going to move 1, 2, get closer to the objective, and then he's going to draw a trait. He's not going to move into an adjacent spot to that runner because he doesn't want to take the damage. So he's just going to draw a trait card. And trait cards are just like one-time use power-ups, basically. So he gets dash. Discard when moving, spend any amount of power to move that many additional zones. That's really cool. That's it for Mags. Mystique's going to move. She's going to go 1, 2, and then she's going to use her special ability, Shapeshift, at the end of your turn. Oh, you know what? She actually still has another action. So she is actually going to move here, but she's going to spend her power to use Shapeshift. At the end of your turn, if there are no enemies in your zone, you may spend 1. If you do, enemies ignore you during the next enemy phase. So this guy will not attack her, and she was able to get closer. That's a really cool thematic ability. It's similar to abilities that were in other Zombicides, but it's not the same. And then finally, Storm is going to activate, and she's just gonna move to here. We're gonna crew up to burst through this door, basically. That's it for the hero activations. Now the enemies activate. Again, it's super simple. So he does not know that she's there, and so he's gonna move here because he couldn't get to anybody from over there. So runner activates. That's it for him. And then you spawn. So the only spawn points... Wait, actually, you start with a shitload of spawn points in this mission, unless I'm missing something. Yeah, all the spawn points spawn. So starting with the one that's numbered, 2 walkers and a walker rush, which does nothing. Grab 2 walkers. Boop, boop. Down here, 3 runners. It's got all the miniatures on the side and in the miniatures box. Usually I come up with some kind of custom organization for Zombicide, but I'm not feeling the need for it, at least not yet. And then, okay, here's a special card. Multiple man multiplication. So spawn indicated walkers in all zones containing walkers. So 1 walker, because I haven't leveled up yet, spawns in the zone that has a walker in it already, and now there are 3 of them. That's another like really cool unpredictable card. And then that's it. So that is a round of Marvel Zombies, and you know, it might take 10 rounds to play the game, so you can see it plays pretty quickly. And that's basically it for my thoughts on this. I have to admit, I'm pretty burnt out on Zombicide. I did not back DC Zombicide because who gives a fuck about DC? I did not back Undead or Alive because I knew this was coming, and I kind of wasn't really looking forward to this coming, and I was seriously considering just flipping it. But having played it now, I actually really like it, and I just really love how quickly it plays and how thematic it is with the various heroes. So, you know, Marvel Zombies gets a thumbs up from the Grumpy Meeple, which is a nice change of pace for CMON and this channel, because usually I'm beating them up for their abusive business practices. But this game is awesome, and there's really no downside to it. So, hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think in the comments about these minis or the game. Have you played it? Are you interested in it? And I will talk to you later.